Hello everyone and welcome to the Watch Complications channel. I'm Brian. Thanks to all my followers for being around. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, ring the bell if you want updates. Follow me on Instagram at watch_complications and check out the site watchcomplications.com. One of my more popular videos as of late, even though I did it some time back, is on watch and watchmaking tools, the basics. I went through quite a few tools, everything from tools to change straps, measuring things, putting hands on watches, lots of stuff. And that was just to get you introduced that if you're getting into tinkering with watches, not necessarily watchmaking, just anything that has to do with watches, sort of the basic stuff you would need. And what I want to do in this video is extend upon that idea and cover some more tools. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm going to put some links in the video description below for the tools, whether that's a general site where you can go and you can find and peruse and search and get some of these tools, and also some specific ones also. So take a look at those if you're looking to buy something that I might show in this video. Please keep in mind this is not a demo video. I'm not going to show how all these tools work. It's a quick showcase. Like in the first video, I showed a lot of the tools, say these are the ones you'd want to have around, depending on what level of work you're wanting to do with watches, and that's the same idea here. I do show the tool usage in a lot of my other videos, whether that's like, say, making custom watches series, my making custom dials series, and so on. So I do show their usage, and you can find other videos out there on YouTube. The point of this is a quick showcase that if you want to get to a certain level of watch tinkering, making, prototyping, so on and so forth, these are the sort of tools you want to have around. I show a few tools in this video that are still what I would call in sort of the basics category, or at least with general watch upkeep and taking care of your watches. But some of them are more in the vein of prototyping, dial work, those sorts of things. So sort of an intermediate step if you're really going to get more serious about watches as, say, as a hobby, or even as sort of a tinkerer, right, a learner, and sort of the beginnings of a maker. I might do a future video where it gets more into more intense tools, where I can get deeper with certain things. I'm going to show some today, but like my 3D printer and pad printer. But if you wanted to get into sort of machining, where we're talking about CNC machines or a metal lathe, that sort of stuff, then we might do a video on that in the future. We'll see. But I want to go over some more tools with you all, and hopefully this will be informational. Quick wrist check for today. I'm actually wearing a watch that I don't wear very often. It may be the first time I've worn it this year. It's my LaVille regulator. This is a Kickstarter. I reviewed it. I'll put the link up in the video. It's a unique looking watch. It's got the crown at 4. Regulators, so all the hands are separate from each other, the hours, minutes, seconds. This also has a day date. Why have I held onto this watch? Well, one, it's got a unique clear plastic disc with the minutes that goes around. You can see the circle there. And that's one cool thing about it. The other is the size is right, and it's got some more thickness than a traditional quartz might have. It's really got a fun, unique look about it. But it's also mecha quartz, so it has that sort of mechanical look to the seconds hand. It's more of a sweeping motion than a tick-tock motion. And it's also one of the few watches that matches a strap that I have here, which is from Strap Bandits. I'm going to have a strap review coming up on these soon. They've sent me a few straps to take a look at, so I put them on some watches that matched up pretty well, and I'm going to give them a look. Strap Bandits is using British and Italian textiles to make these straps. It's actually really, really nice, comfortable quality. So there'll be more on that in a review coming soon. But let's not delay any further. Let's take a look at some more watch tools. Right, one of the things I want to start with in this video is a tool that I showed the last time, which is my Timegrapher. What I didn't show was the Timegrapher running. And so I'm just going to hit the on button over here. You can see it says multifunction Timegrapher. It's going to do an auto detect. So right now I've just set a watch on there that I just had sitting around. It's my Marlowe Haskell Sand. It's a hand wound movement, and this goes in different positions so you can test it. Let's say dial down, that sort of thing. Simulate wearing it on your wrist at a certain angle, and you can record the session if you want to call it that. You can see it's got the plus or minus seconds a day in a given position. It's got the amplitude there. You get the beat error, and you've got the VPH, which on this watch you can see is 2800, and you've got the lift angle. So that's what a Timegrapher looks like when it's running, and the type of information you would get off of it. Just wanted to expound on that a little bit compared to just showing that, hey, this is a Timegrapher in the first video. All right, so let's get into some more tools. This is a press for crystals and casebacks. Pretty simple notion. You put a die on the bottom and a die on the top, and then you can use it to help, again, let's say you have a quartz watch, you pop the back off, You want to have it centered when you press it back on. You can sometimes do that with your hand or other things, but it's best if you have a press, it's going to do it evenly and makes the work just a lot easier, a lot quicker. So there are flat dies like this one. You also have angled dies like this one, so that if you use it for a crystal, pressing a crystal into a case from the front, it is angled so that it kind of presses around the sides and helps force it into the case. So you would find a die that fits the case back fairly well. Then you would put the die on the top that is meant for the size of the crystal, and then press that back into place, or to pop them out, or to put case backs on. So crystal case back press, good tool to have around. Now for most watches, you're going to use a crystal press to, let's say, change the glass on something. But if you have a plastic crystal, some sort of acrylic, something that bends, not sapphire or mineral glass, but if you have a domed crystal like this one, this is my Christopher Ward C65 vintage, and this is domed, as you can see, but this is sapphire, so I wouldn't use this particular tool on it. But there's something called a crystal lift, which looks like this, which can be used for plastic crystals that will bend a little bit. This would be for cheaper watches if you wanted to quickly change it. So this is the crystal stand. You put the crystal down in here. You can size this for however big the crystal is. You place it in there, lock it down, and then you can use the crystal lift to put around the crystal and compress it from the sides, or bows it up, and then you can put it inside the front and then drop it out. Or you can use it to remove the crystal. So for example, if this was sitting on a workbench, I can unscrew this, you can see, and as I unscrew it, you can press up and you can see that popping out. I'm not going to demonstrate the full usage of it, but we would get that to the size we want, put it down on the crystal, and then screw this in. It will pull in towards center evenly from all angles. These are spring loaded, and then we can lift the crystal out. Again, plastic only. If you have glass crystals, this would break them. So just got to use the right tool for the right job. This also won't work for a flat crystal, but if it's got, an edge or dome, you can get in there. This can make quick work for plastic crystals. Now in this low cost watch range, you have plastic crystals, and if you can't source a new crystal, let's say it's really scratched up, or you don't want to go through the case back, take everything apart, you don't have the tool, how can you fix some just minor or even, some significant scratches on it? Then there's another, I'll call it a tool, it's really a liquid, it's called Polywatch. Even if you're just an enthusiast, this is something you should probably have around. It's a white liquid substance. Show it to you here. See there? So you put this on the surface of the crystal and get a nice clean cloth, and you just rub it into the top of the crystal, and that will help mask, take out, alleviate scratches, makes it look a lot newer, puts a little bit more of a gloss back on it. So Polywatch is a great thing for any enthusiast. If you have, let's say, your Casios and your Timexes, and even some Seiko watches that use sort of lower end glass sometimes, and some depending on which ones, Polywatch is a great little tool to have around any sort of a watch enthusiast bench. Another tool, we'll call it, it's really a moisturizer, but in the watch care, specifically strap care category, getting a look at this wonderful VC here, is a moisturizer for straps, high-end leather straps. There's all kinds of lotions and moisturizers and stuff out there. You have to be careful with what you choose, because a lot of them will, let's say, darken it, or they'll change the color, and you don't want that to happen usually. But you do want to keep the leather healthy and from cracking over time and wear. I have a couple really nice high-end leather straps for some of my nicer watches, like this brown alligator, and I also have my Mugatu blue alligator strap that's on my Grand Seiko. It's a good idea to have some Saphir Reptan around, and we got the brand, and it's Reptan is the product. It's a moisturizer. It works great on lots of high-end types of leather, not just on watch straps, but let's say you had shoes or leather bags or other types of goods that are made out of different animal skins. And when using any moisturizing product for leather, always take a little bit and put it on a less noticeable location on the strap, and rub that moisturizer in, let it sit, see if it changes the color, and that will tell you whether or not you should put it on the rest of the strap. So this is a good thing to have around if you want to give some nice healthy care to your leather watch straps. Now, a lot of the tools in the first video and those few I just showed you are sort of your basic tinkering with watches sorts of tools. If you want to get into things like prototyping cases, dial making, those sorts of things, then having other fabrication sort of tools around is an important thing, and particularly for prototyping a 3D printer. This is not an extremely expensive 3D printer generally, you know, the cost of a pretty decent watch, let's say. This is my Lulzbot Mini 2. This is my 3D printer, and I've shown this in other videos being used when printing, I think it's like a spacer ring or something like that. But I want to show you this tool a little bit more, so let me flip it on there. I'm going to start a print, and that'll get going here in a second, but let me show you. There are two tools that I use, software tools, to help with this. AutoCAD to draw up my 3D drawings, and also Cura, the Lulzbot edition, but Cura is what it looks like. You can see I've got a movement holder on the grid there at the bottom, and the print's going to start. And I'm just moving this around. You can see it's got like temperature information, all that kind of jazz. The plate at the bottom will heat up, as will the extruder. I've got white material on there right now. I've been printing movement holders and spacer rings for a client, is running some more of that. So prototyping, dial making, 3D printer, good to have in the office. I've got mine sitting under the floor on my desk right now. All right, friends, you have followed me into the depths of my house. That is the basement, where I have some of my other major tools that I work on. I brought one of my spotlights down from upstairs that I use to help video with, just so this is a little bit brighter. If you go back to some of my earlier videos on the channel, I was such a novice when it came to things like caring about light. I didn't know how big or how far I wanted to take the channel. It's gotten a lot different now, so I care more about that stuff. It's not going to be as wonderful quality down here just because it is a basement, an unfinished basement, but there's just some tools that have to be down here because of their size and usage, that sort of stuff. In one of my more recent videos compared to this one, I showed water slide decals. So if you're going to do prototyping, dial making, that sort of stuff, a reasonable quality laser printer is going to be necessary. This is my Brother printer, and I discussed using this in that recent video on making water slide decals, which is sort of a low cost, but it's also sort of a semi-low quality way of making a custom dial. You would use the manual feed on such a printer because it's really thick paper, and I'll put a picture of what that looks like, what I used in my previous video on making those water slide decal dials. The brand I use is Sony Scopa. They have a Type A and a Type B for different types of surfaces and how porous they are. Like anything when it comes to good watch tools or tangential things that can help you do the work, a lot of these things aren't cheap. Laser printers, not the most expensive thing in the world nowadays, but they're not necessarily cheap either. So you're going to get as good as what you put your money into it, and get a laser printer if you want to do some more sophisticated output print design around watches. And since I'm mentioning tools generally a little bit more in this video, another software tool that I use to help create 2D vector images for dials is Graphic for Mac and iOS. Okay, this is the other side of my unfinished basement. Again, I'm going to try to keep the light up a little bit, but I've shown some of these tools in my Making Custom Watches series, making custom dials, and that is my pad printer and some of the tools you would need along with it. Now this is if you're getting really serious about making custom watches, making one-off designs with a high quality output. The laser printer and water slide decals are okay for, you know, simple things, low cost options. They look okay, but not 100%. You want to get a nice high quality print that's almost flawless when it comes to shapes and curves. You need something more sophisticated like a pad printer. And this is my pad printer setup. You see it here. I'm not going to go through and demo it, as I mentioned. This is just to show you the different tools that would go along with it. So you have a pad printer. These are not cheap. Most of them come from China. Of course, in a factory, you're going to have computerized ones, automated one. This is a manual pad printer. So again, it's not going to have, let's say, as much precision in terms of replication, but if you're making really good high quality one-off dials, it's also a great method. Or multiple, you know, prints of the same type of design. You're going to see my face in here. So one thing is plates. These are metal laser etched plates, steel etched plates. The surface is a blue, so you can kind of see the contrast. This is a design watch design, this would all be one color, and then I have something like, say, the logo, my 10.6 logo on here. This plate goes on the surface over here, like so. An ink cup sits on top, drags ink over it. Those gaps fill with ink, and then the pad, which is attached here, will drop down, pick up the ink, and then transfer it to the dial. I do not show that process here. You can look back through some of my older videos to look at that. Now, depending on what type of a dial you have, you will need an appropriate holder for that. This is an acrylic plate that has been cut and designed for a specific dial, with the dial feet locations and the center hole etched out accordingly, so the dial can sit in here flat, nice and easy for the pad to transfer the ink to it. It's a terrible setup right now because it's just been sitting down here for a little while. I haven't used it on a project for a few months, so I don't have it set up correctly at the moment the way I usually do, but it's on a table with a bunch of stuff right now. But I still wanted to show it to you. And these are the pads. You can get different shapes of pads depending on what type of surface you're printing. Anything from ink pens, mugs, to dials. So we've got the pad printer itself, we've got steel plates, we have the holder, the fixture for a specific dial, for a specific movement. Then we also have, let's say if you're going to do ink, you need a really fine scale. I got a 100-gram scale upstairs as well, but something where you can weigh out different measurements of ink if you're doing a mix as opposed to one of the main colors like white, black, that sort of thing. Now, if you're going to be mucking a lot with dials and dial blanks, you're going to need some soft touch pads, really fine grit arrays of polishing pads. That's for polishing brass or aluminum dial blanks. Whenever you say you have to remove the original print, or maybe it was a scrap dial, or you've printed it and it messed up and you want to start over from scratch again, having sandpaper polishing pads and anything that can remove paint as well. Acetone, you could buy buckets of acetone. Guess what else has mainly acetone in it? Nail polish remover. Quick way to remove ink from dial blanks that you're making or starting with. If you can't find just plain brass ones and source them that way, or different types of paint thinner. And printer has some pretty good stuff, particularly their thinners and inks are pretty good, which is what I mostly use with my pad printer when making custom dials. Now, a couple other tools for more sophisticated work with dials and dial blanks is a soldering iron kit. Like if you needed to reattach dial feet, for example, you need a soldering iron, so a good soldering iron kit would be good to have. If you needed to drill holes or you wanted to do some custom etching on a case blank or whatnot, again, let's take a look here. I'll move the camera off here, sorry for the motion, but I have a Dremel, an etching tool, and different ends, tips for these, different sort of diamond coated surfaces and shapes. Let's say you want to drill holes, you want to do etching, let's say you're etching a name, or you want to do a custom design, certain patterns, then a Dremel circular tool like that would be important and necessary to have around. Okay, so that's my basement stash of tools. This is really away from everything where I've got stronger smells like the inks and the thinners, and louder things like my Dremel engraving tool, where it can be sort of away from everything and everyone else in the house. If I had a perfect world with a nice big massive work studio, it'd be an all different sort of a setup, of course, but this is something I do on my own in my own sort of small way, and so this is my setup, which really needs fixed up. So sorry for the mess, everyone, but it is what it is. But hopefully that gives you a little more insight to some of the tools I have at my disposal that I'm using to help me with some of my watch work. Again, there are more sophisticated ones, hopefully, that will come in the future. CNC machine will probably be next. I could cover more detail on that if I just covered that specific system. But another dive into some more watch tools, and watch for more videos like this and others in my different series coming in the future. Tools, tools, tools. It's all about having the right tools depending on the job you're trying to do. So hopefully you've found some insight in this video. If you're going to get into sort of a deeper dive, these are some of the things that you might want, particularly if you're going to do things like removing crystals, casebacks, changing batteries. If you're going to get into prototyping, building some of your own stuff, some of this stuff will be essential or helpful for getting those jobs done. I'm Brian. This is Watch Complications. Subscribe. Check me out on Instagram at watch_complications. Go to the website watchcomplications.com where you can find information and links to all of my content. Out.